All right, folks. Trying to look at the time here. It is 10 o'clock. I know that we always say we're going to start at 10 o'clock, and we are going to start at 10 o'clock. But I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to see about getting in here and see if there's anybody who has any issues or any problems. In the meantime, while we're getting kind of settled in here before our presentation, don't forget to open up the Q&A. This is how that you're going to ask our presenters any questions you may have on the slides you're going to see for the webinar that you're taking part in today. This is going to be recorded. We will put it on our website. I always tell everybody that attends our webinars that it takes me about 24 hours to get the files from Zoom. They come in a package, and we get the audio and we get the video and everything else. And to put that on our website, we like to ask people for about 24-hour turnaround. And so if you get pulled away, you have customers come in or something happens, and you get pulled away, hopefully this will be on our website tomorrow for you to rewatch. So we just ask for 24-hour leeway just because we have to get the files from Zoom and put them in a nice way and edit them out. Edit out all my banter that we have, let's just be honest. And then we put those on our website. And those will be available to you. A lot of times they put resources on there, the slide decks, any handouts, that kind of thing. Those will also be on our website in the same spot. You can also see webinars that we've had in the past. Maybe you want to catch up on something that we did a month ago or 2 months ago. Those are also on our website. And so please utilize those resources as you see fit. Watch them and rewatch them. That's how great they are. But without further ado, Jen Hicks, she is part of our withholding unit. She is kind of becoming the withholding unit webinar master. And so she's been doing a lot of great things. This is probably her fourth or fifth one. She's just cranking these out. She actually goes out into some of the communities. So across Montana, you might be able to see her at a presentation. You just never know where she'll pop up. But today we have her here. So thank you so much for joining. And Jen, if you want to just take over, Melissa and I will watch the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Like you mentioned, my name is Jennifer Hicks. I've been with the Montana Department of Revenue for 10 years now, 5 of those within the withholding unit, 6 of those, excuse me. I get a little excited when I give my presentations because I really enjoy what I do for a living. I enjoy being able to get out and talk to both employers and employees and help them understand filing requirements for the state of Montana. So as he mentioned, please feel free to ask questions as we go along through the slide. Melissa will answer them as we go through here. If there's something we should address as a group, she will let me know and we can address it as a group as well. So let's get started. So for tax year 2024, we did lower our withholding tax tables. We've also had a change to our W-2 penalties. Previously, they were $5 a W-2 with a minimum of $50. They are now $50 a W-2 with a minimum of $250. Our 1099 for mineral royalties, that minimum stayed at $1,000, but the fee per 1099 increased to $150. Those tie into individuals who have mineral royalty accounts. We only roughly have about 160 of those, so we don't really have a high volume with that currently. House Bill 447, this allowed us to create a de minimis for starting in tax year 2024. The de minimis is a 30-day de minimis. What that means is you have to be working within the state of Montana. If you're an out-of-state employer and you are sending employees to work in the state of Montana, they have to be working in our state for 30 days. And that's 30 days within a calendar year. So you as an employer would have to track the time that your employee is spending in Montana to determine whether or not you need to report any wages or withholding earned in our state. Feel free to give anybody on our team a call and we can talk you through this process. This is new for us this year. The next change is Senate Bill 399. This bill was a change to our income tax for the state of Montana for individuals. And what that did is that caused us to create a new MW4. In previous years, we had allowances where you could say you're single with 3 allowances. We no longer have that option. You now will file based on or withhold based on your federal filing status. I have a few slides throughout the presentation that I'll show you how to complete that new form. I also do presentations just solely on that form. If you have any questions or need us to come in and speak to you or your employees, we're happy to do that. Montana wage withholding is required for any employer or employee working within the state of Montana. Any employers working outside of the state of Montana who have employees who work remotely would be required to follow our guidelines as far as withholding if they work here for more than that 30 days within a calendar year. And just to make sure that you're aware that 30 days, a day is considered the minute you walk into the state. So it's not like you're here for an hour. If you're just here for an hour, that is considered a day. So you just keep that in mind. There are some exclusions to this, like professional athletes, entertainers, that sort of thing. So there are some guidelines on this. And like I said, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can walk you through that. There is some information on our MT Revenue website as well. Montana residents who do travel to other states to work, we will defer you to that state. Not every state is an income tax state, so we do realize that maybe you're sending your employees to work in Washington, which is not an income tax state. So you as an employer, if you're a Montana employer, do have the option to withhold to the state of Montana as a benefit to your employee. You don't have to, but you can as a benefit. But normally we would defer to whatever that state's rules are if you are sending employees out of state to work. There's different types of compensation. Pretty self-explanatory. Wages is usually the big one. Salaries, fees, bonuses, commissions, that sort of thing. Payment in kind. Usually for payment in kind, we'll reference like maybe you have a ranch hand who comes in and works for you, and instead of giving him wages, you give him a vehicle. So you would, at the end of the year, what you would do is you would take the value of that vehicle, and that would be the wages you would enter on your W-2. If you do have any of these situations, they are unique. So if you do have them, please feel free to reach out and we'll walk you through that process if you have questions. There's very few that we have that are not subject to withholding as far as compensation goes. Previous years, our tip income was not taxable to the state of Montana. That has changed for tax year 2024. So tip income is now taxable to our state. So what we would recommend is however you file that information to the IRS, that's how it would be filed to us as well. You really shouldn't have to make any changes as far as how you determine tip income. The other change for us is previously unemployment was not taxable to Montana. That will be taxable starting in 2024. So if at any point you do go on unemployment, you'll want to make sure that you talk to the unemployment office and have them withhold income tax for the state of Montana on that unemployment. So once you determine that you are going to have a business in the state of Montana or employees working in the state of Montana, you would want to open a withholding account. Please keep in mind, we do have some situations where people think if they open an account with DOLI or another state agency like Secretary of State, that would automatically transfer over to us. That does not. So you'll want to make sure that you reach out to all the agencies that to open an account. For us, it would be for withholding, for Department of Labor, that would be unemployment. So unfortunately, we don't all communicate all the time on all these new businesses coming into the state. So please make sure you're reaching out to everybody that you need to get an account opened. And anybody that issues wages in the state of Montana on a W-2, both with or without withholding, is required to have a withholding account. And then anybody who issues 1099s with withholding. We do ask that you still submit your 1099s without withholding. You can just attach those to a Form 1096 and submit them that way. You do not have to have a withholding account to submit 1099s without withholding, just with withholding. And in order to open up a withholding account, of course, you would need to have that FEIN. If you don't have an FEIN from the IRS, you wouldn't be able to open a withholding account with us. Everything is based on that FEIN you receive from the IRS. If at any time that you are having a business within the state of Montana and you restructure that business and you're issued a new FEIN from the IRS, you would need to close your current account and reopen under the new FEIN. We'll walk you through all of that. We'll help you with your filings and stuff at the end of the year. If something like that happens mid-year, you just need to reach out and talk to us and let us know. But we're happy to help you through that process. Excuse me. Once you do open a withholding account, you'll receive a letter from us in the mail. We have also started a new process where the withholding unit is sending out, which you have all received in order to be attending today, a new welcome email. And in that email, we're attaching information for filing requirements and offering the option to attend these webinars. We're trying to find new ways to make sure people understand the filing requirements within the state. We understand every state is different. And so we're working really hard to try different ways to make sure we're reaching out to all of our new account holders to make sure that they understand what our rules and regulations are in the state of Montana. So I do appreciate all of you attending and responding to that email. That lets me know that it is working, so that's good to hear. And again, you will get a letter from us that has all of your information in it, letting you know your filing requirements and your account ID. And gives you a couple other links in that email or that letter as well. That letter will also be used if you want to register to use our TAP system, which I'll show you here in a little bit. A TAP, we are encouraging all employers to use TAP when we do understand you like to use outside payroll providers, but if you can use TAP, we are recommending that just because we're able to help you more with payments and that sort of stuff. And I'll show you some examples here throughout the presentation. To calculate your employees' withholding, we do have an employer tax guide that we do update every year. And that tax guide is the new tax tables. Our tax tables lowered for tax year 2024 due to Senate Bill 399, and our tax bracket's changing. So our highest tax bracket was previously 6.75. It has dropped down to 5.9. So our tables dropped down to compensate for that. The purpose behind our new income tax is that we're trying to provide you more money from paycheck to paycheck in your pocket and less money on a refund at the end of the year. Now, we know people like to have that refund. We're not telling you can't have a big refund if you choose to withhold more than what the tax tables are recommending, but the idea is to give you more money from paycheck to paycheck in your pocket. Your calculation, again, will be based on your federal filing status. It'll be based on the amount of wages you earn, of course, and your pay frequency. So we'll go over the new MW4 here in the next couple slides to help you determine what that withholding would need to be for your employees. We do submit this information to payroll providers who work with us every year, who file electronically. So this information, depending on who you use, will probably already be uploaded into your payroll software. So this is what our new MW4 looks like. Again, it's changed formatting for this year. If you haven't been with us in previous years, it'll just be normal to you. But those of you who have had employees in the past with us, this does look a little bit different. So we're going to go through it section at a time. And again, feel free to ask questions as we go through this, because we want to make sure everybody's completing it correctly. So the top section, pretty self-explanatory. This one is where you're going to complete the information as the employee. We are recommending you use a physical address. We do ask that, especially if you are requesting an exemption, and I'll go over the exemptions here in a minute, because the exemptions are generally based on your physical location. So if you input a P.O. box, we're probably going to deny that and then send you a letter that says we denied it and this is why, and then we'll ask for additional information. The reason behind that is we can't verify your physical location with a P.O. box. So the next section is where we're going to talk about your filing status. Again, it's going to be based on your federal filing status. So those are pretty self-explanatory: single, married filing separately. If you have multiple jobs, married filing jointly, or qualified widower, and head of household. So what you would do is you would check whichever one qualifies what you file on your federal form is how you would file for Montana. In the past, you used to have the ability to file separately on the same form for Montana. That option has gone away. And so now if you file separately with the state, you can still file separately with the feds. You can still file separately with the state, but you would have to do it on separate forms instead of on the same. For the married filing jointly with both spouses working, this box, generally the reason why we have put this in there is if you and your spouse are both working and your wages are within $10,000 of each other, so you earn $50,000 and your wife or your husband earns $55,000, you would only mark box 2, and that would be all you would need to do, and it should withhold enough for you. If you and your spouse have a significant difference over that 10,000, so you make 100,000 and your spouse makes 50,000, you would want to mark 1B, and then you would want to fill out the multiple jobs worksheet, which we'll go over here in a second. Line 3 is your extra withholding. So if you are working multiple jobs, or if you and your spouse both work and that wage difference is significant, you would want to put extra withholding, and that would go on line 3. We are recommending that this is done on only the higher wage earner, but as spouses, you can decide what you want to do. You can split it between the two of you. You can put it on the lower paying one. We just recommend the higher. The other option for this line would be if you have 1099 withholding. Not all retirement companies will withhold to Montana, so you would want to take that extra withholding based on that retirement income. And then again, on unemployment payments. Unemployment will withhold for you, but if there's a situation where you decide you don't want to and you just want to put the extra withholding on maybe your spouse's income, excuse me, then you could fill it out on that MW4 and put that extra withholding on line 3. Keep in mind, this is additional to your federal filing status. So what will happen is the system will look at what your federal filing status is, withhold based on that, and then add an extra. If you put $25 on line 3, it would add an extra $25. And that will be per pay period. Question 4, please be very cautious on this question. This is the one that keeps me up at night. And the reason behind that is line 4 is, the purpose behind line 4 is if you know your filing, your withholding down to the penny, or your tax liability down to the penny, and you know you only need $100 a month in withholding, or per pay period, in withholding, that's what you would put on line 4. Maybe by the end of the year, you always get all of your withholding back because of the amount of credits that you have on your return. So you really don't need withholding. So you could put a 0 here. But please keep in mind, if you put a 0 on line 4, there will be absolutely no withholding withheld from your paycheck. So you want to be very cautious. If this line does not apply to you, your best bet is to leave it blank. We are recommending to employers, if you have employees who put a 0 on this line, maybe just have that discussion with them and help them understand what that truly means. Because the last thing we want is for anybody to intentionally not have withholding when they need withholding. So if you have any questions on this line, this one seems to be the one that gives it the most questions that we've been getting since this form came out. Please give us a call. Have your employee give us a call, whatever you need to do. We just want to make sure that they are withholding when they need to be withholding. This is our multiple jobs worksheet. And I have a couple examples in the next couple of slides where I'll talk about how to fill this out and how this will help you determine or why you need to complete this form if you have multiple jobs, or if you and your spouse have a significant difference in your wages. So in my first example, you're a single taxpayer, you work 2 jobs. So in your first job, your income is $70,000, and in your second job, your income is $20,000. So what you would do to the table off to the right is the higher paying job would be on the $70,000 column or row there. And then your lower paying job is your $20,000 column. And where those intersect is that 1,046. That withholding is what you would need to withhold for the year based on your 2 jobs. So you would take that 1,046, put it on line 1 of the multiple jobs worksheet, and then you would skip line 2 unless you have more than 3 or 4 jobs between the two of you or yourself. And then you would go to line 3, which asks you about your pay periods. So if you were paid, excuse me, every other week, you divide that by 26. And so in this scenario, that's $41 a pay period. Now, when you make that division and it's like $40 and some change, we're recommending that you always round up. So like in this scenario, it's 41. So then you would go back to the main worksheet and you would put $41 on line 3. So it's going to withhold based on your federal filing status and take an extra $41 every pay period. So that should hopefully at the end, and this is just, keep in mind, this is just your wages. I'm not talking about anything outside of in your tax situation because I don't personally know what that would be. So this is just solely looking at your wages. So you would withhold an extra $41 per pay period, and that would help compensate for the 2 different incomes on your second job and your first job. Again, we recommend you put that on the highest paying job, but you can decide which one you want to have that extra withholding. So here on this spreadsheet, I'm going to show you why we're recommending that you do that. So if you look at that table up top there, on your first paying job, if you, for $70,000, you're roughly making $2,693 every 2 weeks. So if you look at that table up above there, or excuse me, and then in your second job, you're making roughly $770. So if you were to combine the two, the total is $3,463. So if you look at the table up above, the first $562 of that is not taxed. The next $788 of that is taxed at 4.7%, so that's roughly $37. And then the remaining $2,113 is taxed at $125. So your total tax every 2 weeks is $162. So then if you look to the calculation table off to the right, the green table there, if you were to take that $2,693 to the table, which is going to be the very bottom row, and you're a single filer, you're withholding $117. If you take the $770, which is the top row, you're withholding $12. If you add the 2 of those together, that's only $129. So you're being taxed at $162, but you're only withholding $129. So that's why we're recommending the multiple jobs worksheet, so that you pick up that extra missing withholding every pay period. So at the end of the year, you don't owe that. In our next scenario, this would be a husband and wife scenario. Excuse me. The first spouse makes $100,000. The second spouse makes $60,000. So you look at the $100,000 row and the $60,000 column, where they intersect is $2,212. Now in this scenario, we're saying the higher paying spouse is paid weekly. So that would be divided by 52. So that ends up being $43 extra every week that you would want to withhold. So then we're going to go over to the example of why we're asking you to do that. And so if you were made $100,000 and you're paid weekly, it's roughly $1,924, and the $60,000, it's roughly $1,154. If you add the 2 together, that's $307. So if you look at the table up above, again, the first $562 is not taxable. The next $788 is taxed at 4.7%, which is $37, and the remaining $1,728 is taxed at 5.9%, and that's $102. So roughly it's $139 in tax every week. And then if you were to take those same numbers over to the table, the $1,924 is that roughly that bottom column there, or row there, and you're married, so you're doing that middle column, so that's $76. The 1,154 is at the bottom of that first kind of box there, and that's roughly $31. So if you add the 2 together, 107. So again, you're being taxed 139, but you're only withholding 107. So that's why we're recommending the multiple jobs worksheet. And then for the next section on our MW4, that is going to be your exemptions section. We have a few exemptions. 2 pertain to military. One is with North Dakota, and the other is if you are a enrolled member of a registered tribe where you live and work. you potentially have an exemption on that income. So if you have an employee who fills out this exemption section, we are asking that you submit these to the state of Montana for approval. We'll send you a letter, let you know whether it's been approved or denied. And again, if you don't provide a physical address for an employee, they will be denied potentially, and then we'll reach out to you and let you know what we need to be able to approve that exemption. We do recommend that you fill these out as soon as your employee is hired so that we can get that exemption approved. The exemption is something you have to request annually. So if you have the same employee every year asking for that same exemption, you just submit it every January. We'll send you the letter that's approved or denied, and then you don't have to worry about it the rest of the year. And then if you have new employees that come on periodically through the year that are requesting an exemption, you would want to fill it out at that time. Anybody that's filling out the top section of that, of our MW4, we do not need to see those ones. We only need to see the ones for the exemptions, but we do recommend that you keep the MW4s on file because we do periodically audit those. And then the bottom section is just the part where the employee would sign it, and then the employer's information. Please don't forget the employer information because we do need that in case we have questions. So then the next section is our MW3, and I'll show you an example of our form here on the next screen. This is the form that needs to be submitted annually along with a copy of any W-2s with or without withholding, or 1099s with withholding. The reason behind this is what we use to balance your account every year based on your payments you're making for your withholding. This form is due by the 31st of January of the following year, so this year's tax form will be due January 31st of 2025. Excuse me. And then again, all MW3 or W-2s and 1099s are due at that time as well. This is an example of our form and what it looks like to be when it's completed correctly. We do have issues with the bottom section there with all the dates. That's what we call your recon schedule. If you are to file and your withholding is over $1,200 and you put it all in on 12/31 of 2024, we will do what we call a check period frequency, which we're going to split that withholding liability out for the months because you are required to file monthly as a new account holder. So just make sure that you fill this form out correctly. It really helps us. Annually, we deal with about 6,000 MW3s that are incorrect, and that just slows down us getting any refunds due back to you or getting the return on the system. So we do ask that you try to fill this out correctly. If you have questions on how to do it, please give us a call. We're happy to walk you through it. And we'll spend as much time on the phone as necessary answering any questions and helping you through any of our processes. So some account holders will be considered not required. What this means is you're not required to withhold, but you still are required to report any wages earned to us on an MW3 and report the W-2 showing wages no withholding. Generally, individuals who are considered not required are our ag accounts or our domestic accounts. You as an ag or domestic account holder have the option to withhold for your employees. We recommend you withhold, but it's not required. But you do still need to report that information at the end of the year to the state. Every year we run through what we call a look back period. This period, it runs from July 1st of the previous year to June 30th of the current year. And what we're looking at is the amount of withholding you're submitting to the state of Montana. And so based on that withholding, we could potentially change your filing requirement. All new account holders are monthly. So what that means is you have to report all withholding on a monthly basis. So your January withholding needs to be paid by the 15th of February and so on throughout the year. And then once you go through this look back period, depending on your withholding amounts, which I'll give you here in a second, you could potentially change. You could become annual, you could become accelerated. So we do look at the amount of withholding coming into the state from you as the employer. Keep in mind, as a new account holder, it'll probably be about 2 years before you hit this process because we have to get that depending on when your account opens. We do this in October of every year. You'll receive a letter by November 1st if your filing requirement has changed. And keep in mind, when you receive that letter, it's notifying you for the following tax year, not the current tax year. So if you issue $0 to $1,199 in withholding for the entire look-back period, you're considered annual. So you only have to report and pay at the end of the year. If your withholding is $1,200 to $11,999, you will be considered monthly. And again, your payments are due on a monthly basis, so by the 15th of the following month. And then your MW3 and W2s will be due by the 31st of January. If you're accelerated, that means that you're paying $12,000 or higher. In that scenario, we defer to the IRS. So whenever you're paying them, you can pay us. Now, keep in mind, you can pay as often as you want. We have some people who like to pay every day. We have some people who pay every week. It's really up to you. You just want to make sure that monthly withholding is paid in full by the 15th. That's what our system is looking for. This is your payment schedule that I just briefly went over previously in that previous slide. So keep in mind, annual is by the 31st, monthly by the 15th of the following month, and accelerated, we follow the same as the feds. We also have an e-services division or department. This department works with our TAP website, which I'll show you here in a minute. They also work with all of our payroll providers who like to submit electronic files. They go through a testing process every year with us for the MW3. So if you do use TAP or you have other issues with vendors and you're trying to submit information to us via TAP, e-services will be who you would work with to get things fixed. They are also the ones that will work with you with your third-party access, which we'll show you here in a minute, or any other electronic services you're using through our TAP site. This is what our TAP website currently looks like. We're always making changes, so don't be surprised if it shifts a little bit when we add things or change things. So, but this is basically what it looks like right now. Keep note of this unclaimed property section. If you want to see if you have any unclaimed property being held at the state of Montana, you'll just want to look. You can look that up by clicking on the link in that unclaimed property. You put in your information and it'll search our system to see if we're holding any unclaimed property. That could be old paychecks. It could be, an old safety deposit box. It could be all kinds of things. If you have, maybe your parents have passed on, you have their information, you could input it in there just to kind of see what's out there. Who knows? They handle millions of dollars in unclaimed property. So never, takes a couple minutes to take a quick check there. It doesn't hurt. Maybe you have some money. I ended up with $400. I've known people that have ended up with thousands of dollars. So, take a couple minutes, take a peek, see if we got anything that we're sitting on there for you. If you want to register via TAP, which we highly recommend if you're going to register a new account with the state of Montana, that you do register via TAP just because it's a much quicker process. You can submit paper if you want, but we push TAP quite a bit as far as registration because it's just much faster. So you would go to our TAP website, you would click on that business section there, register for a new tax account, make sure you have your EIN, and just walk through that process. Make sure that you do include anybody that is going to be a contact on your account, because I will tell you, if they are not a contact, we will not talk to them in specifics about your account. We'll give them general information, but nothing specific as to your account. So if you do have any changes, in your payroll or whatever throughout the year on who may handle your information that we can talk to, it's really important that you update us, because we do feel bad, but when we have to tell people no, that we can't share anything with them when they do work for you. So just make sure you're keeping us up to date on any contact information. Once you receive that letter from us in the mail, that link up top there where the arrow is pointing is where you would go to register to have a TAP account. Pretty quick process, ask you a couple questions, but you do have to have that letter because it will ask for some information that is on that letter when you go to register for that account. Then once again, this is the information that they'll need in order for you to register for that TAP account. One of the benefits too that we like to push with TAP is if you are a if you handle multiple accounts, is you have the option to have a third-party access, and it will provide you with an account center where you can handle all of your accounts. So if you're a payroll company or you're, you know, like one of the bigger accounting firms and you handle multiple accounts, this is a good way for you to be able to access all those accounts that you handle with one login versus having to have a separate login for every account. And there is a process that you would walk through to grant access to your accountant to be able to do that for you. There's a couple different types of access within TAP. Administrator, you pretty much have access to do whatever you need to do in TAP. Your account manager is going to have a little bit less of that access, and your limited person is only going to be able to file and pay. So when you are giving other people within your organization access, just make sure you're paying attention to the type of access that you're giving them. To file your MW4 on TAP, we do not accept paper MW4s. So if you do have a taxpayer that has an exemption, you will have to have a TAP account so that you can submit those requests via TAP. And then the next couple of slides I'm going to go through pretty quickly, but they're just screenshots of what it will look like when you go in there to submit your MW4 on TAP. So when you get access to TAP, this is what it will look like as far as your withholding section. And then you would click on More, File an MW4, and then it makes you make sure that your account information is correct. You would click Next, and then it would go into, okay, you're going to add an MW4. And then once you click on that screen, this is what it'll pull up. And this is where you're going to put in your employee's information, select which exemption, and hit Submit. You can do multiple at a time. As you've noticed down there at the bottom, you can add another one, or at this point you could submit it. So it's really, you can add as many as you need to. We do have some companies that do, 50 of them at a time or 20 of them at a time, depending on the situation. So we are used to seeing that. And so you don't have to, do each one separately. You can add a big file together when you submit it to us. Once you do submit that, we recommend you keep a copy of this confirmation page that will be provided to you once it's submitted. The reason behind that is that confirmation number there in bold. We're able to do some research based on that confirmation number. So do keep a hold of these when you do submit anything via TAP, because that helps us help you when you have questions. There's a couple options for submitting payments in TAP. E-checks, credit card payments, debit card payments. Keep in mind, credit, debit card payments, there is a small processing fee, which is what usually assessed by the third-party vendor. But if you do like ACH or e-check or whatever, that's a free service. And keep in mind, TAP is a free service. It's something we offer you as a client with the state of, or customer with the state of Montana. So if you do submit, want to make your payments, there's a make a payment section in your withholding section in TAP. We are asking that if you are going to make payments, please make withholding payments. Right now, currently, a lot of people, they get in a hurry, it just defaults to bill payment, so they just select bill payment. What that does is that then comes into our system as a credit, and we have to change all of those payments because they're not truly bill payments, they're withholding payments. So if you are going to make a payment via TAP, please try to make sure you select withholding payment when you're doing so. Your bill payment should only be used if you got a bill in the mail from us, like an NOA or an SOA saying you have a balance due. Then once you do that, you'll select the year. Then it will bring up this screen where you're going to select your payment method. If you do the payment via the bank account, the nice thing with that, the screen will come up and you'll put in your information and then you can save it. So then every time you have to come in every month to make that payment, you would just come in, select your payment date, put in your dollar amount, and submit it. So it's pretty handy. It saves your information for you. You don't have to. I know some people are a little skittish about stuff on the internet, but we take a lot of pride in our security. So, if you want to save that information in there, it is a secure website to do so. And then I wanted to show you this screen. I've got two examples here. The first one is just a couple payments that have been made via TAP, and then the bottom section is it would be what your balance is at the end of the year. And the reason I wanted to show you these two different options is because if you make your payments in TAP, on the next screen, I'm going to show you how to file your MW3 at the end of the year and how convenient it is with making payments in TAP because it just transfers all those payments onto that form. But I also wanted to note that you need to keep in mind you are going to show a credit balance throughout the year until that return is filed. So don't panic if you see a credit and you're making payments. So at the end of the year, what should happen is that balance of $2,500 should match your withholding on your W-2s and your withholding on your MW-3, and everything should just balance out for you. So on this next screen, I'm going to show you how you would file the return. You would just click File Now up top there under the period. When you do that, it brings up this first screen, which again is going to want you to verify all your information is still correct. It's very important to keep your address up to date. We get tons and tons of return mail every year. So please try to keep your address up to date with us so we make sure that you get any mailings that we need to send out. So again, this is just that address screen that you're going to want to verify your information, your account information, and your address information. And then this is what your MW4 or MW3 is going to look like in tab. So the one off to the left is before you've inputted any information, and the one off to the right is what it will look like when you're done. So as you'll notice, you're only going to be required to fill out a couple fields. You would have to put in the number of W-2s or 1099s and whether they were paper or electronic, and then the amount of wages. Your withholding automatically defaults for you based on your payments. So if your withholding is not correct in that section, you would make the adjustment down below in your recon schedule, and then that would adjust that up above. The only information in the recon schedule, if your withholding is correct, would be your period end dates, and that generally is just the month end. So like 131, 228, and so on throughout the month or throughout the year. And then you would just, once it's all completed, you would hit submit. And then it always will send you a warning that says you submitted your MW3, did you submit your W-2s? And we do that because every year roughly we have about 30,000 W-2s that we don't receive. And it's really important that we get your W-2s because that's how we combat fraud on the individual income tax side. Because if we have an individual who submits a return and that wage information does not match what you as the employer submitted, we're not going to release any refunds. We're going to do some more work to make sure that it's not fraud. So it's really important every year that you get your W-2 submitted to us on time because it will hold up your employees' refunds if we do not get them. You can submit them electronically via TAP, or you can send them in paper. We are encouraging electronic filing, of course, because it's just much faster. And in this day and age, everybody wants everything right now. So we are encouraging you to submit those via electronically filed, but you don't have to. You can submit paper if need be. So I'm going to walk you through how to do it manual W-2. We don't recommend manual W-2s. If you have like 50 employees, that is going to take you time, but you can submit a text file to us via TAP, and our e-services will help you through that process. So if you do decide to do a manual one, maybe just have one employee, so you can do manual entry, and then it will bring up this information. You just verify your employer information. Then this next screen, it's going to ask you, what are you filing? Are you filing a W-2C? Are you filing a W-2G? What is it that you want to file with us? So in this scenario, you would select yes for a W-2. Then it's going to bring up add a W-2. And then you would fill out your W-2 based on the information that you have in your payroll system for that employee. This is the top section that I'm showing because it's a pretty big screen, so I cut it in half. But this is the top section there for you that you would complete. And then the bottom section here that would have the state information on it. We do also have information, if you have information in 11, 12, or 14, down below where you can enter that information. And then you would hit submit. It would give you another confirmation number, and you would want to make sure you keep that confirmation number handy in case there's issues. The other nice thing with TAP is you have the ability to manage your returns and your payments. We have a new process now where you can actually upload your payments into a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, if you need to do your reconciliation if you're having issues. Excuse me. So in order to do that, you would just go into this manage payment and return section, and then you can bring up a list of your payments, and then there where it says export, you can export that into an Excel and be able to do some reconciliation that way if you need to. This next screen is how the file upload formats that you would need to have in order to upload with us within TAP. Your W-2 and 1099 format is a text format, and then your MW3 would be a zip format. So if you want to upload like your information from a different payroll software and then submit it into us via TAP, this is the formatting that you would need in order to do so. And again, our e-services will walk you through that process if you decide to do that. So as I mentioned earlier, all of our vendors, payroll providers, have to go through an approval process, which we call LOI. This is the letter of intent process to file with us. And the reason I like to mention this to new individuals is because they have to go through this process every year. And if they choose not to, or if they miss the deadline, you would have to submit paper. If your payroll provider didn't meet the deadline on this process and you hit submit, your return would be rejected immediately. So if that happens, you would want to reach out to your vendor to make sure that they went through this process. And if they're still in the middle of it, you may want to submit paper so that you're not late. In order to see who our approved vendors are, you would just go out to our website. You would click on online services and then approved software, and then you would go down to the wage withholding and payroll tax software. And then what it will do is it will bring up a screen that looks like this. This is just half of them. We have way more than this, but and this would tell you if your vendor has been approved to submit electronic MW3s with us. This is only for our MW3s. All W2s can still come into us electronically. And so you would just scroll through this, make sure your person is, or your vendor is approved, and then you should be good to go to submit any of your forms electronically if you'd like to, through your vendor. This screen here, this is our Montana tax news you can use. This is a newsletter that we submit periodically. We do it quite frequently towards the beginning of the year. Sometimes it slows down in the off season, but then it will pick back up. I recommend that anybody who does have a withholding account or any account with us, even an individual, that you go out and you request to be a part of this. What this is this sends you information letting you know what's changing with our taxes, what new changes came with, SBC, the marijuana tax, alcohol tax, like all of it. What you'll do is you'll go to our website. Down at the very bottom of the screen, it says subscribe. You click on that, you'll put in your email. And then the next screen is where you get to go in and choose what you hear about. So you get to choose. You don't have to necessarily hear about everything that goes on here if it doesn't pertain to you. But you can select what you want to hear about. Like I like to listen on withholding, of course. I also get information on cannabis. I get information on, just about everything that we do, just because we, as withholding, we kind of intersect with everybody. And so it's just a good way to keep up to date with what we have going on. And it's not junk email. Like you're not going to get some random stuff that, you don't want to know about. It's really because you get to choose what you hear about. So I just highly recommend it if you get the chance to go out there and subscribe to that. This here is just some additional resources for you. I'll leave this screen up here for a little bit so you can jot down any of this information if you'd like. mtrevenue.gov is our website for the Department of Revenue. It's a good way to keep up to date on stuff. We always have a banner saying, hey, don't forget to do this. Like at the beginning of the year, we had a banner about our MW4 since it was new. It just has a lot of information about what's going on at the Department of Revenue. So it's a good source to have. The next one is for your transaction portal if you decide to take advantage of that service. And then the approved software, that's just a direct link to that. But again, you can also get to it from our mtrevenue.gov website. And then the filing requirements for the MW3, W2, and 1099s. And then the other information is contact information. We have a great call center, but they have to deal with every tax type. So if you do have questions that are just specific to withholding, I recommend you use that withholding loop line and email, just because in our peak season, a lot of times the call center gets so busy and a lot of times you can't get through. So if you do have direct questions for withholding, I do recommend you reach out to us directly. If you have any questions concerning electronic filing and whatnot, that DOR eServices at mt.gov is a good contact for them. Again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen today. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. I work with a great group of people. We're actually hiring another one here soon. And they'll stay on the phone as long as you need them, whether it's 10 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes, whatever. We're happy to help you with whatever we can help you with. If we can't help you, we'll get you to the person that can. There's also DOLI puts on what they call ABC clinics. If you have the opportunity to participate in that, I would highly recommend. I do present at that as well, just because it's a lot of really great information about requirements for the state of Montana and if you're a business in the state of Montana. So I do recommend you look for those as well. But again, I appreciate your time today. Hopefully we had some questions. Oh, it doesn't look like it, but
We
yeah,
had one.
again. Oh, okay. If you guys have questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you guys so much. And just as before people start signing off, once again, this recording we hope to have on our website within 24 hours. And that's because we're waiting for Zoom to get us the audio and video files to us. Once we can download those and post those to our site. So we're kind of at the mercy of what the Zoom client does. But do we have any questions? Becky's looking forward to the ABC clinics. Jen does a good job at that.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of information for DOLI on unemployment and just wage an hour and just all kinds of stuff. So yeah, great resource.
All right. So we don't have any more questions. So I'm going to stop recording and button this thing up. And then, like I said, please go to our website and check out all those resources that we have, both in the past and current. Get signed up for our newsletters and reach out to Jen and her group if you have any questions along the way. Thank you guys so much for spending the day with us, or at least the morning. Jen, thank you so much for presenting, and look forward to seeing everybody next time. Stop recording now.
Thank you.